It's just loading. This is definitely a new approach for us. This is definitely a new approach for us.
It says we're live on YouTube.
Okay, perfect. We should be good then.
Turn the video volume down when you can. Those are your orders.
Mine?
Yeah.
I think this is. Can everyone see my screen?
No. You got two different answers there.
I
But
can see you, not your shared screen.
it's so it's showing. It's just not. Oh, there we go. Okay, now it's good.
What a time. You'd think as a Gen Z, I would know how to do these things. I learned that I'm a Gen Z. I'm not a millennial. So that was shocking news. Um, which kind of plays into what we're talking about today and what we're going to be jumping into. This whole world of social media, this world of online platforms, information sharing, the internet's at your fingertips. So definitely an interesting topic and something that I think is so maybe forgotten about or people maybe gloss over and don't realize how much it can impact their family law matter, their separation, their divorce. So a really interesting topic we have today.
Yeah, definitely the implication aspect is often overlooked. And then sometimes it's too late, right? So hopefully today provides a little precursor into being a little bit more vigilant and sort of getting the jump on it first before it's pushed in your face and sort of, hey, like this is what you did. Sorry.
Yeah, 100%.
No, honestly, it's such a big part of your life now. Like, you don't even think twice before going on social media. Like, it's like second nature to me now. Like muscle memory. I pick up my phone, like my fingers just go to like my abs, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Sonia, do you let your kids, do you have like a rule, like a certain age when you're gonna say fine?
So I don't know if I'm old, but I don't even have social media. And the one social media account that I do have, I have an alias name. My kids don't have social media. Um, they're young. I think if I were to, I guess, allow them to have, I don't know, a YouTube account or something, I don't know, maybe 9, 10 years old, but it would obviously be monitored by me. But I think that, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I remember, what was it? I think Facebook was the big thing when I was, turning 13 or whatever, and that's the age that you needed to be to get a Facebook account. Now you see so many youths
Yeah.
on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, the amount of platforms just keep growing and emerging. So many things to consider. But I do see we are officially after hours. So I'm just going to jump right in. Thank you for, tuning in, everybody. Uh, before we really dive into our topics, I'm just going to go over a few housekeeping items. So you may notice that there's no chat feature, but please feel free to use the Q&A box to submit any comments, any questions throughout the webinar. We really enjoy when our audience reaches out, engages with us. It makes it a lot more fun for us. And then you sort of ensure that any questions or topics that you have questions about can be addressed. Just a friendly reminder that the purpose of this series is to discuss general topics around separation, divorce, and other family law matters. So any information provided in this series should not be taken as legal advice. If you do have questions regarding your specific matter, please call our office or a lawyer in your area to book a consultation to receive tailored guidance. And lastly, do make sure to stay tuned until the end. We will be sharing how you can schedule a free 20-minute meeting with one of our lawyers. So make sure to stick around. Now to jump right into some introductions on who's here with us today. We have Joseph, our compassionate family lawyer who's driven by a deep desire to support families through challenging times. With a background in commerce, he brings a strong negotiation, analytical, and critical thinking skills to his legal practice. His passion for family law was further honed through legal writing, research, and hands-on experience in the family and children law placement at Queen's University. Joseph emphasizes active listening, clear communication, and empathy, fostering a comfortable environment for clients to discuss personal matters. On your screen, you will also see Shanza. She is a dedicated family lawyer with a strong focus on compassionate and effective legal representation. Her background in business management enhances her strategic approach to legal matters. She excels in negotiation, achieving favorable settlements through strategic dialogue and strong advocacy for her clients. And she prioritizes clear communication, ensuring that clients are informed and empowered through the legal process. We also have Sonia joining us. This is her first after-hours experience. And with nearly 9 years of experience in family law, including 2 years as a family law clerk at Russell Alexander Collaborative Family Lawyers, she brings a wealth of expertise to her role. Recently licensed to practice law in Ontario, Sonia now serves as an associate lawyer at the firm, aiming to leverage her legal knowledge to provide exceptional support to clients. And she's very well known for her upbeat and optimistic demeanor. She prioritizes building positive and trustworthy relationships with her clients to alleviate the stress associated with any domestic issues. And last but not least is me. For those who don't know me, my name is Stephanie. I've been immersed in family law for over 6 years now, and my dedication to family law stems from my passion for assisting clients through what's a traditionally difficult time by approaching matters with empathy, integrity, and compassion. Over the course of my legal career, I've gained experience managing a diverse caseload with sensitive issues, negotiating practical solutions tailored to my clients' goals, and also advocating for my clients both inside and outside of the courtroom. So now that you know a little bit more about us, let's just jump right in. Sonia, I'm going to flip things over to you. Your first time with us at After Hours. In this sort of world of social media and how it connects with divorce, how can that growing influence of social media impact the separation process?
Thanks, Steph. So people don't realize that statements or comments about family or ongoing family litigation, anything to do with custody battles of children, general overall information that could affect your family or a family law dispute should never be posted and online on social media. And anyone involved in the family matter should very much be cautious of this. So the bottom line is it's better to share as little as possible, if at all, on social media while in a divorce argument. And if you really have to remain on social media, it is highly recommended that you change all your social media accounts and update all your passwords in any family law dispute. And finally, and if you really have to post on social media while in a divorce dispute, we encourage you to always ask yourself 2 questions. 1, what do my posts say about me? And 2, how would the judge look at these posts? So that, whenever I send an introductory letter to all my clients, I immediately indicate all this information to them. So just allow them to be cautious of what they're doing when on social media while in this divorce or custody negotiation. That's it. So go ahead.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's maybe the last thing people turn their minds to is, is my page public? Who can see my stuff? Are my kids on social media? Will they see what I post? So having that right from the jump to, highlight to your clients, these are things that you want to consider that you might not have, to ensure they're, not exposing themselves to certain risks, or, even to be cautious of dangers themselves, to be subject to those risks. Um, Anyone else have anything else to add to that?
I just want to say those are some great questions, Sonia. Like I'm gonna use them. Like you really want to think of the consequences of what you're posting and what it says about you, and and who are you posting it for, right? Who's the audience? Like what's going on in your head when you're posting these things? Do you want the world to know? Do you want your kids to see this, right? And these are questions that people don't generally ask themselves until it's too late and they've posted it, right? So great tips there, Sonia. Thanks.
Yeah, funny enough, that's actually something I include in or I usually include in my initial reporting letter to clients. My clerk Darla, she's great, and she actually came up with sort of a little spiel that she includes, and it basically says like if you're gonna post or you've posted in the past, how is this gonna reflect on you down the line? So I think everyone's raised some really key points there.
Absolutely. And, the other aspect to always consider is how your posts are going to impact any relationships. How can social media affect these material dynamics and can, even continue to aid in these breakdown of a relationship? Shanza, do you have any, tips or anything that you've noticed how that can happen?
Yeah, so there's a number of things that come to mind when you think of social media and its impact on relationships, and specifically breakdown of relationships. In general, social media can bring ways to stay connected, share about yourself, your memories with your partners, but it can also bring a lot of challenges. If you bring increased exposure, it can bring increased exposure to outside influences. You get exposed when you're on social media, you get exposed to opinions, lifestyles, temptations. Some people, they tend to compare what other people have and their relationships. And this can lead to dissatisfactions with one's own life and relationship. Sometimes people will compare their marriages with what they perceive online. And this can create unrealistic expectations and feelings of inadequacy. People often portray certain versions of themselves in social media, so you can never really know what someone else's life looks like. We're also looking at things like privacy invasions. Sharing personal details online can really blur the boundaries between public and private life. There may be disagreements between partners on what is appropriate to share and how much privacy should be maintained when it comes to social media and sharing about your life. Also, like your partner's online habits, like liking posts, commenting on pictures, staying friends with exes. This can easily stir up insecurity, jealousy, mistrust, constantly checking up on what your spouse is doing online. Suspicion, tension, and this can really break down trust between relationships, which is really crucial. Platforms like Facebook, Instagram, even LinkedIn, it's easier for people to reconnect nowadays because of social media and start new connections. And sometimes this can really blur the line between, innocent interaction versus emotional cheating. And as divorce lawyers, an aspect of social media that we see more often is publicizing private conflicts and oversharing on social media. Sonia talked about this just now. When couples use social media to air frustrations about their partner, their marriage, this can make conflicts worse. Sharing private issues publicly means you are inviting scrutiny, you're inviting judgment, you're making it harder to patch things up. These posts can cause embarrassment, you're oversharing. People sometimes fight on social media, text back and forth, emails back and forth. You're leaving a digital trail of everything. Ultimately, social media can help you stay connected, but oversharing, misusing, can really impact relationships, and couples should think about how their use of social media can impact them and their relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. And you raised a great point about, this fine line between, what's maybe emotional cheating and new relationships that form that start from social media. And, in Ontario, we have a no-fault divorce system. So when it comes to any type of cheating, adultery, emotional affairs, a lot of clients will feel that there needs to be some sort of retribution. There needs to be some sort of, punishment, or they need to get something in return to mend that hurt. And that can be a really challenging conversation to have with clients, that ultimately, when it comes to the courts and the legislation and what the judges will look at, those types of infidelities and affairs, whether it's very well detailed through social media and this digital sort of archive, it has no effect on the entitlements and the rights, for whether it's financial or otherwise. That being said, there is evidence in divorce proceedings that, comes from social media and that can be really impactful on the progression of litigation, or, impact your family law matter, in your divorce or settlement case. Joe, what sort of things, might the court look at?
Yeah, so yeah, you're 100% right. There is an increasing importance of digital evidence, and courts are increasingly accepting social media posts, social media messages and photos as evidence in family law proceedings. Social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter have often served as sources of information regarding parties' activities, their finances, their other relationships, as well as their parenting behavior. And you may be asking, well, what is the relevance? So there are a couple things that these social media posts are actually relevant to. First being financial disclosure. So posts that contradict claims of financial hardship, whether that be vacations, luxury purchases, when you're dealing with unequal division of net family property, both of those things can impact decisions on how, for example, spousal support and division of property are allocated, or how a judge sees how they should be awarded. With respects to parenting, posts that show recklessness or irresponsible behavior, such as substance abuse or neglect, can often influence judges, as well as the decision making and parenting time decisions of judges when they are awarded through order, as well as looking at both the character and behavior of the spouses. So inflammatory or abusive language, harassment, any disparaging remarks about the other spouse can affect support or parenting time as well. So those are all key legal issues that must be considered when you're looking at the relevancy of these social media posts. With respects to how the evidence itself is actually gathered, I've sort of broken it down for former clients and current clients in about three ways. The first being our public posts. So these are any publicly shared content that's posted, for example, on someone's Facebook wall, on their Twitter feed, and any publicly shared content, excuse me, is predominantly fair game for collection. There's also the private messages aspect, so that can be direct messages to the spouse, and those can also be used, but private posts can be disclosed, albeit they have to be through a judge's order, and that's given if the judge deems that those private messages and private posts are both relevant and accessible. The third being as it relates to third-party information. So photos, tags on posts, and posts themselves that are shared by others that even include or maybe involve the spouse may also be used if a judge orders for third-party disclosure. With respects to admissibility, there's sort of two things that are looked at. The first being both its authenticity as well as its context. So social media evidence must be properly authenticated and placed in context of the family law proceeding. It must be relevant. Screenshots alone sometimes may be insufficient, so there are other ways to go about that to confirm its authenticity, as well as there's the aspect of privacy issues, right? So unauthorized access to a spouse's account, for example, if you hack into their account or if it's through coercion, may lead to other legal repercussions than what you're currently in, and that also affects admissibility. One thing I do want to touch on that sort of doesn't necessarily relate to social media is the idea of taking videos and recording conversations between spouses. I know it's not really the preview of this seminar today, this session today, but I just wanted to point out and highlight judges do not like when you record or video any calls or interactions between spouses. They despise it greatly, and they generally will not put any weight as to that evidence. So if you are going to record, phone calls, if you're going to take videos of maybe altercations that occur, just know that a judge does not like these, as it really breaks the trust barrier between the spouses. So if any of that does arise, likely a judge would not really give it any weight.
Yeah, it's definitely a conversation that comes up. I have this recording, I have this, snippet, this screen, grab or whatever the case may be. It's one thing if it's to protect yourself from any sort of risk of domestic violence or assault or anything like that, just to have clarity there and to have, the full picture. Or, if you have, security cameras on your home or things like that, but using the I can never say the word, but these frivolous recordings that you don't know what transpired leading up to it. And that sort of, getting the full picture is, I think, a key indicator why judges don't typically use a lot of weight on those, because you really don't get the full picture if you're just getting a 30-second snippet. But all of these types of this evidence, these posts, there are always potential dangers. Sharing personal information, sharing emotions on social media. We've all heard some sort of variation of the internet is forever. Once it's out there, you can't take it back. And just like everyday privacy and security risks, once information or something is posted, it's very, very difficult to control who will see it. So personal details put on social media about your separation, about your divorce, about your private family matter, it can be easily accessed, screenshotted, shared by others, which also leads to potential breaches of privacy or misuse of information. And this really gives rise to concern about privacy rights of any children involved. So courts do not look favorably upon a party who engages in negative campaign against the other spouse on social media. We see time and time again that bringing a legal battle to a public online platform, especially when kids are involved, it's not going to be in the child's best interest. And it can create the need for a court to intervene to protect any vulnerable person and their privacy. In 2018, there was actually a case, EH versus OK. And the concern was raised around a social media post made by a father where he made comments about the child's mother, the ongoing court case, and he actually posted his daughter's photo to solicit funding to help his legal fees. So not only did this breach the child's privacy, it was also contrary to her best interests. So the court referenced the Children's Law Reform Act, particularly Section 28(1)(c), and that deals with parenting orders, and it enables the court to make any additional order that they deem necessary and proper in the circumstances, which includes limiting the duration, frequency, location of contact or communication between the parties or by a party and a child, and or prohibiting a party from engaging in specific conduct in the presence of a child, or at any time when the person is responsible for the care of a child. So in this case, EH versus OK, the judge noted that the court can make an order in the best interest of the child and ultimately ordered the father to not belittle the mother, to not post about the court case, and to remove all existing posts and commentary that were within his control. So that's one sort of instance where we see the court stepping in based off of, some social media activity and creating an order to protect the child. In another matter, the Ontario Superior Court of Justice stated that the party requesting a restraining order must have reasonable grounds to fear for their own safety or the safety of a child in their care. So there was a 2020 case, AT versus VS, where the court found that a restraining order was appropriate given the respondent's activities on social media. While the respondent had not threatened physical harm, they invited online followers to search for the applicant, encourage them to bully her, and the comments on the respondent father's post included, some that were threatening, which ultimately led the judge to conclude that the applicant mother's fear for her safety was reasonable. So it was the father's social media comments that really were the grounds for the judge to issue that restraining order. So those are just some, two examples of where the courts have stepped in based on social media behaviors and actions to protect whether it's a vulnerable child or a vulnerable spouse. So definitely things to keep in mind. So those are sort of two examples, but there's also, some impact on, what we used to call custody, we now call parenting time and decision-making responsibility. But social media activity can definitely influence how the court, sways in terms of any orders for parenting time. Shanza, do you mind touching on how that might look or what might happen?
Yeah. So there's two sides of it, using social media or having stuff on social media that can be used, the positives and the negatives. Joe just talked about using social media evidence, and this kind of like stems from kind of the same topic. So in relation to parenting and decision making, the impact of social media, could be online proof of parental judgment. Is there social media proof that maybe shows reckless behavior? Any inappropriate content can be used to question a parent's judgment and responsibility. Um, you know, um, just one time I had a case where, the parent drove the kid without a seat, and there's a photo of that. And how do you mitigate that? Like as a parent, you don't want to do things that can be unsafe for the child. Courts can view this evidence that the parent lacks the maturity or focus needed to care for the child, which will then impact, how much parenting time you're getting, the decision-making responsibility and how that is split. Are you able to make decisions that are in the best interest of the child? Remember, that's the test that the courts look at. What is in the best interest of the child? And sometimes social media evidence can be used to, indicate whether a parent is in a position to care for a child. On the flip side, social media can be used to show a parent's involvement in their child's life, right? Pictures or posts showing family activities, educational support, or other positive interactions that can kind of support your claim, that can show that you are an involved parent and you have been involved in the past if there are claims from the other side saying that you didn't spend any time with the child, right? So social media can, help you in that sense to bring that evidence in terms of, what parenting looked like while you were together, and to have photos to kind of support those claims. So you can use that evidence to maybe show evidence of time spent with the child. Also, when there is conflict between co-parents, sometimes parents will post negative comments about the other parent. This again hits on what we've been talking about before. Don't do it. It can also be taken as unwillingness to foster a co-parenting relationship. It's not just about, who is going to view those comments. It's also about how willing are you to foster that co-parenting relationship with the other parent, because that is something the courts will look at. Both parents, as long as it's safe for the child, should be involved in the child's life. And they want to see willingness from you to facilitate that relationship. Courts, they favor positive communication between the child and both parents. So social media activity, that fuels conflict or alienates the other parent can really work against the posting parent. Another aspect of this is parenting agreements. I had a file where a client came to our firm for a separation agreement, they have agreement on most issues except posting about the kid on social media. One parent does not feel comfortable sharing photos of the child online, and the other parent doesn't have family in Canada, and the only way they can share these photos is through social media, right? So there can be disagreement on that too. So these are issues that get canvassed in the separation agreement as well. What are the both parents' stances on, how social media can be used, what can be posted, what cannot be posted. And there are people who will enter into agreements specifying exactly what they're comfortable with and what they're not comfortable with. And if you already have a separation agreement, you want to make sure that you are not violating any terms in the agreement. Social media can really play a big role, so always be mindful of what you're posting and how it can impact you. And if you have any separation agreements or you are entering into a separation agreement, you want to think about how you want to address social media and the agreement on whether it's already been addressed and if you are, complying with the requirements that you have kind of agreed to in the agreement.
Yeah, and another thing that I see very frequently nowadays too is when the children are going to be allowed to have social media. If kids are maybe 10, they're not really into it yet. The parents want to ensure that they're a united front as to when or what age a child will be when they're, you know, allowed to be exposed to social media and what, privacy restrictions are going to be put in place, all things that you might not ordinarily consider. But when push comes to shove, it's something that you'll want to address and you'll want to make sure that you're on the same page with the other parent about. I do see we have a question coming in. What if the ex of somebody of the person is still connected with their social media, even marriage? He cannot remove the connections or even pictures. How does this work with a divorce? I'm not too sure if I understand the question. Maybe whoever submitted, if you don't mind providing some clarity, unless Joe or does anyone else have a comment to this?
Yeah, I can maybe sort of infer what this person's asking. What I can say is, 'cause I just don't really understand the question too much as well. But what I can say is that in Ontario and in Canada, because family law is a federal jurisdiction, but with respects to divorce, we have no fault divorce. So it doesn't matter if there's been adultery. It doesn't matter if, like I said, if one person's maybe emotionally cheated or physically cheated. That does not change whether or not the divorce can be followed through with, and it doesn't give one party a greater claim to property, or it doesn't entitle them further to support. So that's just without question that it's no fault divorce in Ontario and in Canada. With respects to still being connected with social media, of like an ex-girlfriend or an ex-boyfriend is still connected with that person and social media, that I really don't see any issues with that, as long as that if you're currently in a family law proceeding with that person, that you do not delete anything that's been posted. It's really important that you make sure that anything that's already been posted to social media has to not be deleted. Your responsibility when you are in litigation, when you are in a family law proceeding, is that you have to preserve any and all evidence, even if it doesn't necessarily go in your favor. And if you do retain a lawyer, they will provide you with that information, but you have to preserve all information that is related to the family law proceeding. So I would advise that anything that's been posted already, any photos that have been posted that are connected with this person, with this ex, and you are in a family law proceeding with them, I would advise that you, or at least inform, because it's legal information and we're not giving legal advice, but I would legally inform you that you preserve any information, any photos, posts that you have online, because you're going to have to preserve that information. I don't know if that's the
Absolutely.
preface of the question, but I'm just sort of putting
Yeah.
two together. Um, that's my take on it. I'm sure the others in the panel will sort of agree with me on that one.
Absolutely. And if that's not, and you have, a follow-up, please feel free to throw that in the chat, the Q&A box. But Sonia, I'm gonna flip sort of things over to you. Maybe you can help us and help our audience understand the legal implications that, social media use during divorce can have. Any privacy laws. I know Joe touched a bit on, evidence and what's admissible. But do you have anything to share, with respect to those legal implications?
Yeah, so to put things into perspective, people don't realize that in the past, communication between parties was verbal or in a letter. And today we have text messages and emails, social media posts. So a lot of people, like, they forget that these can be potentially harmful or admitted into evidence, right? So something to be aware of, right? And there are legal implications. Now, piggybacking off of what Joseph said, and I'm going to quote something from my, again, Joseph understands my initial retainer letter, is that nothing that you said or wrote before your separation or when you contacted a lawyer is permissible to destroy as it is part of electronic evidence that may be relevant. So again, piggybacking, preserve all and any information as it relates in your family law case. There are increasing number of judicial decisions that support this. Negative posts about your ex, they can, even though you feel good about talking bad about your ex online, you should be careful because it could be used against you. And I want to I have a couple examples, like not personal, but different files that I've had. I've actually written them down here because, as you can tell, I'm reading. So, if, for example, if you're posting a video or a picture on social media, it can be used as evidence in court. So, for instance, if the issue in dispute is equalization and you're posting a video of you on vacation, you could potentially be misrepresenting yourself to show that you have more money than you are claiming to have. Or perhaps you own a business perhaps there's a dispute about whether or not you own a business and you're saying, I do not own a business. And then suddenly there's a post on Indeed and you're looking for an employee to fill a role at your business. So it can be used against you. For instance, I have another example here of parenting, right? Dispute is in parenting. And you post a video or a photo of you highly intoxicated. Well, guess what? The other party may turn around and say, you're not a fit parent and you should be watching the children rather than doing these things. I actually came across a 2008 Alberta case, MJ and AD. And here, I'm just going to quickly summarize. The father had Facebook page and he posted various things, basically just disrespecting the mother. And in the end, the court came to the determination that joint decision-making or shared decision-making responsibility of the children would not be in the best interest of the child because it would be destructive and or chaotic. So these are things a lot of people really do have to take into account. I know we're repeating ourselves over and over again. We're trying to get it in everyone's head. Don't post on social media or refrain yourself from doing so if it may affect your parenting or your family law dispute. With respect to privacy laws, I have just a quick point about, and I think maybe Shanza has already mentioned it, about accessing your social media, like your ex's social media accounts. So you want to be careful because it could be a breach of privacy there and potentially a tort claim. So this kind of evidence can be obtained illegally and therefore admissible. So you want to be careful with that as well. That's right. And
Yeah, absolutely. I think when people are in a couple, you are in a relationship, maybe you did know your spouse's password, maybe, you did use each other's phones or whatever the case may be when you were in a relationship. And to exploit those passwords, that access, once you no longer have consent to do so and to utilize, whether it's social media accounts, emails, any type of technology, you're no longer just risking your family law dispute, but other legal recourse as well. So you want to make sure that you are not doing anything that's going to be criminally used against you or crossing those those lines and those boundaries, because it could be worse for you, not only in your family law matter, but in other legal proceedings as well.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, and so we talked a little bit about, the legal implications, legal considerations, but there's a lot of emotional considerations to take into consideration as well. How the toll of social media use during a divorce can impact whether it's the other parent, if there's no children involved, the other spouse, or the children of the relationship. Shanza, do you mind talking to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. I think divorce is already a stressful and emotionally charged experience for people. And I think social media can often make it worse. Constant exposure to updates, photos, posts from friends, family, your ex can trigger feelings of, anger, sadness, jealousy, regret. It can really, trigger some emotions in you, making it an even harder process. Um, there's a number of ways that social media can trigger these feelings. I kind of hit on this point already. People tend to sometimes compare themselves and their relationship. And social media can really fuel those feelings. Um, you know, People tend to sometimes idealize other people's and their lives that they see online. And to counter this, I think it's helpful to remind yourself that social media is often not a full picture of reality. People choose what they want to post about themselves, and as the people tend not to share, the whole reality. And no relationship is perfect, and avoid that. And it's not healthy, and it's easier said, but that's one way social media can make divorce an even harder process. Sometimes posts from your ex or comments, even from well-meaning friends, can trigger, emotional responses. And in those cases, sometimes it's just best to, maybe disconnect or distance yourself from social media. Consider unfollowing your ex and their close friends to avoid the unnecessary reminder of the relationship, to avoid unnecessary exposure to their life. The simple step can sometimes really create that emotional distance and give you some space to heal. Constantly checking your ex's social media is not healthy. It can, you can be stuck in the past because of that. So set boundaries for yourself. Um, and we've talked about this, sharing your frustrations online can be tempting, but it often makes things worse. It can invite unwanted opinions. Instead, try to express your feelings privately. Could be through journaling, therapy, talking with close friends who are well-meaning, who understand your situation. I would also suggest that you take some time to clean up your social media feeds and, focus on the positive stuff. Follow accounts or join groups that promote self-care, emotional healing, personal growth. Having that content can sometimes really, give you the support and give you the push to focus on yourself. It can be uplifting to have that content, and it can really cut down negativity and can make you feel a little bit better during your divorce.
Thanks, Shanza. Yeah, there's so many different, um, you know, aspects that go into any type of separation. But emotional is one we always deal with. And having that extra fuel of social media and something in writing and something that's sort of constantly almost staring at you, it can be really, really challenging to overcome. But you mentioned, other alternatives of, leaning on friends, leaning on family. There's also other, support communities. There's other forums, support groups for individuals going through a separation or divorce. It can feel very isolating at times if, you've never been through this, you've never anticipated going through this. Sonia, do you have any maybe tips or resources for those kind of communities?
Yeah, definitely. You guys just touched on pretty much everything I wanted to say.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's great. Yeah, so there are several online support groups you can find, forums, people going through divorce or separation. Even just a simple Google search, you'll come across many different groups. You can stay anonymous. The people going through divorce or have gone through divorce or going through separation or have gone through separation, they'll give opinions, they'll give advice, they'll even be a sounding board for people, right? There's instances where you don't want to contact a lawyer just yet because you're afraid, you don't know if you want to go through a divorce or you don't want to go through separation, and you just want to find out about parenting issues or equalization. Again, these are things that you can just anonymously post on these forums, and other people that have gone through it will give you some advice to see where you stand. You can find online groups specifically geared or specifically for fathers or just men, or mothers or just women, or even just religious support groups. If you are religious and you would rather, get an opinion from someone that has that similar spiritual or religious background, you can have private discussions with people online. Again, and what Shanza was saying, uplifting, it's empowering, and it makes you feel that sometimes people feel like they're too afraid to take a step forward, and listening, having someone listen or offering a different perspective or a perspective that they've already gone through can most certainly help a person make a decision on whether or not they're ready to go through the path of separation and or divorce. So yeah, you guys covered quite a bit on that one. Thanks.
Yeah, but that's definitely the positive, right? We touched on a lot of the negatives, a lot of the risks, a lot of the consequences and things to be mindful of. We don't want to say social media is this awful, dangerous,
Yeah.
scary thing. Don't have it, delete it, throw your phone out the window. We're not saying that at all. There are obviously positives and ways to connect with like-minded individuals, people who have gone through the same, trials and tribulations that you might be facing yourself. Even this program, we're on Zoom, but we're also through YouTube, and Russell does an amazing job about ensuring all of these different resources are available on these different online platforms. So if you haven't already checked out our website, there's links to different blog posts, different articles, information that you might want or want to take a look at before reaching out to a lawyer. So definitely utilize, those positives that are online and on the internet.
Right.
Yeah, so we talked about a lot of different themes, common challenges faced by co-parents, especially related to social media use and any type of digital communication, really. We touched on how oversharing can often become, an argument. One parent might share personal details about the children, the separation, co-parenting struggles, exposing those private family matters to friends, family, or even strangers. That can be uncomfortable to anyone, and it may result in arguments. So just being mindful of what you are sharing, if you're crossing that boundary, that might result in an argument. The other common challenge is, conflict, disagreement, or grievances when they're aired on social media platforms. It can cause a spectacle. It will only escalate. You might have, friends chiming in, your spouse's friends chiming in, and it creates this, really toxic divide, not only between you and your spouse, but, this whole friend group and now your social circle, the people that you once leaned on. It's, causing people to take sides. And that can only, amplify the situation. It also opens up risks for your children learning these types of conflict resolution skills or poor conflict resolution skills. and replicating them in the future. So trying to sort of nip that in the bud on the outside and always take the higher ground and do your best to model good behavior so that when your children grow up and they can reflect on, the years prior, they sort of take the positives from it and are able to apply it to their lives. The other, another common challenge is the impact of placing your family's private life on public display. Shanza mentioned that unwanted attention, the unwanted scrutiny for the whole family, including the children. It may make them feel uncomfortable or embarrassed. I had a matter where, maybe it's not necessarily related to your family law matter, but you're posting certain views, opinions that are very, very strong, maybe some comments that are inappropriate that, your children's friends might see and, might bring them to your child's attention. So those are things not only in your family law matter that you want to be mindful of, but just in general, what you're posting on social media can get back to your children, friends of your children, and ultimately cause conflict and, escalate the situation. One other thing that I'll just touch on, another common challenge that we do see is escalated misunderstandings. Digital communication, it lacks the nuance of face-to-face interaction. You don't have the body language available to you. So it will more often than not cause a misunderstanding of hostility and anger because you don't have those nonverbal cues. Messages can be taken out of context and it ultimately blows, what's that phrase where you make a mountain out of a molehill? So things to be mindful of whenever using any type of social media or digital communication. Something that you may have, if you've tuned in before, heard us speak about are parenting apps. If you and your partner are unable to really communicate effectively, that whether the trust is broken, there's miscommunication and things are taken as passive aggressive when they aren't. There are communication parenting apps that you can utilize that actually help filter that type of communication. So it might flag something that is deemed passive aggressive. It keeps record of everything, so you can't, edit a message, 3 scrolls back. So something to consider if you are having challenges with digital communication, perhaps a parenting app, could be useful to limit those tensions and to help moving forward. So those are just a couple challenges we kind of touched about, want you to think a little bit more in depth about. But Joe, do you have any practical tips, any guidance for navigating social media use during separation, during divorce, any type of family dispute?
Yeah, so it's sort of a culmination of everything we've sort of spoken about today and sort of summarizing everything for everyone. The first I would say, I like to call it pause and reflect. So before posting anything, I really urge you to consider how it may be interpreted by your spouse, by their lawyer, or the court. That's number one. Number two, adjusting your privacy settings. So I would ensure that your privacy settings are as restrictive as possible to minimize public access to your personal information. Number three, it's been repeated multiple times, and I'm going to repeat it again for everyone, is to avoid venting online. So refrain from discussing your divorce, discussing your separation, or really any negative comments about your spouse. This can backfire extremely and be used against you in court, as we've discussed today. Another one is to be cautious of your friends' posts or even family members' posts. Sometimes you may be tagged or mentioned in posts by friends and family, and it's important to ensure that their posts are aligned with your cautious approach, right? You don't want them to be dragging you into anything. So just be mindful of what they're tagging you in, what photos they may be posting online with you in them. Just make sure that they conform to a responsible, respectful spouse, especially if you have children. Really important to document harassment or any defamation. So if your spouse posts defamatory or harassing content, keep a record of it, right? Keep a record of it for any potential use in court down the line. But like I said, it has to be relevant to your matter. So as long as it is relevant, which if there is a trend of harassment, uh, then it will be or should be deemed relevant to your matter. And finally, seek legal advice, right? It's really important to consult with a lawyer before posting anything that may be of concern. Legal counsel can advise you on whether certain posts may impact your case, either, positively or negatively. So if you ever are in doubt or questioning something, number one, if you have a gut feeling or you're questioning something in the first place, you probably shouldn't do it. That's number one. But two, if you're still questioning it and you still follow through with it or you want to follow through with it, seek legal advice. And I think that sort of covers everything we've spoken about today. We've gone into great detail. Does anyone else have any maybe points or best practices that I maybe missed that they want to chime in on?
I have one. Use an alias name if you're going to continue on social media.
Absolutely. I think the fear of being discovered, being, obviously no one's stalking me, but I think there's always this kind of fear of who's really behind a screen. You get a request to be followed, you don't know who it is, don't accept it. These sort of tips that you want to ingrain into, children as they grow up and they want to be online and they want to have the world at sort of their fingertips. Those similar tips and guidance to protect your privacy definitely apply even as your adults, as your, parents, things like that. So just ensuring you double check those privacy settings, you make sure that you're, everything that Joe just mentioned. One other thing that I will reemphasize, and I know Shanza brought it up a little bit too, is using social media to sort of aid in parental alienating behaviors. Using online platforms to undermine the other parent or portray yourself in a more favorable light while putting the other parent down. Just to reiterate what's already been talked about, how that might impact the court or the judge's perception on your ability or your willingness to facilitate a relationship with the other parent. So there's so many things to consider. There's so many aspects involved. And like we said, the internet's forever. Even if you take it down, there's ways to get it back. There's a digital track of everything. Facebook, there was a whole scandal with that. So just always be mindful.
Anything that's deleted can still be recovered. I'm gonna put it out there. So if you think you're gonna be slick and delete past posts, it'll come to bite you. And then a judge will I can't say for certain, but I promise you a judge, regardless of the post, they're gonna look poorly on you if it's a bad post, but they're gonna look way less poorly on you if you leave something there than if you go back and delete something, because then it looks like you're hiding and a judge does not like that.
Yeah, and if you're willing to tamper with that or sort of to try to cover your tracks in that way, it questions, the integrity, the trustworthiness of what your position might be. So it's definitely cautious. Be cautious about that.
I was just gonna add on stuff to what you're saying. We're here to help you, right? When you retain a family lawyer, we're here to help you. So if you do find yourself in that position and something's been posted, don't delete it, reach out. And sometimes, asking us for assistance might be better than you going and deleting something, and we can help navigate that issue together.
Yeah, absolutely. We always tell our clients, be transparent. I want to know the good, the bad, and the ugly. The more I know and the more, truthful you are with me, the better I can help you. So that's, kind of where I'll end on that. Is anyone else have any other last comments to share on that? Yeah, so we do want to thank everybody for tuning in. For our Zoom attendees following the webinar, a brief survey will appear, allowing you to share your comments and suggestions for future topics you'd like us to explore. Your feedback is always greatly appreciated. We want to make sure that this series is tailored to topics that our audience really wants to know more about. We also did mention at the the beginning of this webinar that we have an opportunity for a complimentary 20-minute meeting with one of our lawyers. So to take advantage of that, please contact our office. We do have operators standing by. So if you give our office a call, 905-655-6335, or you can email Nicole in our intake department. I'm just going to pop her email in the chat box. But when you are scheduling your appointment, please provide the code after hours, and they'll be able to fit you in. We do ask that you try to schedule your appointment by noon this Friday. Your appointment doesn't have to be by noon this Friday, but at least to just get you scheduled in. Also, for those of you attending, registration is open for our next event. So our next event is relocation and mobility issues with children, and that's on October 1st. So to register for that, just go to russellalexander.com/familylawnow. And thank you to our panelists. Thank you, Joseph, Sonia, and Shanza, for joining us and sharing your insight today. And thank you for our audience members for tuning in. And have a wonderful rest of your evening. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Steph. Bye, everyone.